And joining me is the much anticipated interview with the CEO, the Don, the Emperor of Team Trinity, Ernie Provetti. What's up, Ernie?
What up, Gotti? Save D12, please. The Lakers need him.
You want to send him back to Orlando?
No, we don't want him. We're okay with our 20-game win season. Where's Kirby? I don't hear him. I don't hear Kirby.
Oh, unfortunately, Kirby could not be with us because he is out on a date with a lady.
You're
Can you believe that?
I mean, all the time you guys wanted me on the show, and I finally come on the show, and Kirby disses me.
Well, it's his first date in years, and, I can't blame him there. But, I tried to get him on. I did my part. I tried to get him on, but he said, dude, I got to go on this date. He goes, can't Ernie do it at 5:30? And I said, nah, Ernie can only be on about 7:30.
I had to go to the bank at 5:30. It didn't get done until 7. It takes a long time to deposit all that. Well, since Kirby's not here, Niners.
Oh, yeah. The heck with the Niners.
And between you and Kirby, you were always my favorite anyway. The only good hand was Brother Ryan Hand. You know I love you, Kirby.
Yeah. Kirby would fight back with saying, hey, I sold a ton of those Kirby Hand Oval editions and made you a lot of money.
What's the Kirby Hand Oval edition? No, Kirby was a great oval racer for sure.
Yeah.
Those are fun days. I mean, even today I think about those days when we all worked together. It was great.
Yeah, we had a blast. We were talking about it earlier in the show about how much fun it was to be in that apartment with 7 guys and one bathroom.
Did you have a hopper? I could see Big Jim on the toilet saying, "Shut up! I'm on the hopper." That was fun. Those were fun times, I tell you.
Oh, it was great. And I was never on work on time because I was like the last one to get out, to use the bathroom.
You worked on site? I never knew you worked on site. I thought you worked off site. I didn't. Just kidding.
Well, the times I actually showed up, I was late. So.
Okay. Well, you had a long drive.
Yeah. Well, only on Mondays I did.
Right.
So, but yeah, we were talking about that earlier. What a fun time it was, and we ribbed you a little bit because we said, yeah, Ernie would take us out to Chili's for lunch. It was really cool. I mean, he would buy, and we'd laugh it up, have a good time. But then when we got back to Trinity, man, he cracked the whip.
I had a different personality, man. We were no longer friends when we walked through those arches.
and that's the truth, listeners. That is the truth. Good times.
I mean, we were on a mission there. I mean, that was a great company at that time. We had great staff, and God, at one point, I mean, I remember I used to catch up and then just work on next quarter stuff or the quarter after that. That's how many projects we were doing at once. I mean, you remember. I mean, it was fun times.
Yeah, I miss those days. What we gonna do? And now and then you moved Trinity to Florida on me. So now Ernie ran away from me. So he's like, man, Jersey's too close to Gotti, so I got to move this to Florida. That way, there's no chance of Gotti ever coming back.
Well, I got here just in time. The Magic were competitive when I got here, so I guess now it's time to leave.
Yeah, are you going to keep your courtside seats?
Yeah, Mickey. I mean, I still know, some of the players on the team. They're friends like Jameer and Turk, and that was the great thing about going to the Magic games. Not only were they doing good, but back then I knew most of the guys on the team. I mean, it was like that's why I was probably so animated at the games. I wanted those guys to win because I liked them.
Yeah.
Now it's there's very few veterans left and all new guys. But I'll keep them to see the unfortunately, I hate to say this, to see the other teams. The Heat, Clippers, whatever.
Yeah. Lakers.
I mean, if Kobe's back, I'm there. I gotta say, I mean, Kobe, I always did respect him, but I respected him a hell of a lot this year. I mean, he carried that team for as long as he could walk.
Ernie, you're going in and out a little bit, so just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens this year. And I remember seeing you on TV, and I'd be like to all my friends, "Hey, I know that guy. He used to be my boss right there. See him? See him? See him?" I thought it was the coolest thing to actually know somebody courtside, because I never know anybody courtside. And I was like, that's Ernie right there, right there.
It's great. It's crazy. I didn't realize that, because I guess some of the bigger games, it gets broadcast overseas. And, it's amazing how many people that I haven't heard from in years, just said, hey, I saw you at the Laker, versus Magic or whatever. I mean, recently I was in New York for business, and I stayed at a hotel I normally stayed at, and one of the room service guys come up, and I hadn't seen him in 5 or 6 years, and he said, hey, I saw you on the TV the other night. I mean, it was crazy. I can't even believe the guy recognized me.
That's nuts.
Yeah. That's fun sitting down there.
Yeah. So you're enjoying Florida? I mean, that seems... I was shocked when you moved to Florida. I was like, wow, that doesn't seem like Ernie's spot, but you're having a lot of fun down there.
Well, I mean, after the divorce, I really had to go somewhere. And, it just happened to be Florida. I mean, there's great things about it, and there's some things I hate about it, too. But, for the most part, it's been good. It's certainly, like you say, probably a big transition from the Jersey, New York area.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
It must be hard having to share the same state as our other co-host, who's not with us tonight either, is Jason Rona.
Yeah, no, I hardly see Rona. I mean, I see him every now and then to get a race or something, but he's a good guy. I mean, how can you say anything bad about Rona? He's a Jordan fan.
Oh.
Nick was looking up, shout out to my son Nick, he was looking up rapper salaries before his laptop. And somehow he got to LeBron about how much LeBron's worth. He said, $110 million. So I said, why don't you look up Jordan for the hell of it? I know he hasn't played in 20-some odd years, but just look him up. $1.3 billion.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. He's on a hard
nuts.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Talk about your family a little bit. A lot of listeners love to hear that stuff. I mean, you're living down there in Florida. You got 2 daughters and Nick. Your daughters are growing up fast, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I have one daughter, this is my little one, Juliana, who's 9. And Angelina is going to be 16 July 12th, next week. And Nick is already 17.
Wow.
But yeah, time, that old cliche, time passes by, it really does. I mean, I remember when they were, babies.
I remember Nick coming into Trinity. He was just a tiny thing.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, Jules was only, 3 when I moved down here.
Yeah.
I guess I've been here 6 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what kind of car are you getting your 16-year-old?
That's a topic for discussion. I don't know. Nick's viewpoint is he should be driving a Ferrari because it's a reflection on me. That's not going to happen. And the daughter wants the BMW, which also is not going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Shit, I drove a Gremlin. You can't get much lower than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, hey, wait a minute. At Trinity, there used to be a picture there that Tony Bowers had, the secretary, of you in back of a car. Was that the Gremlin? You were in back of a car selling parts back like when you were trying to start Trinity up. And
I mean, when I was in Brooklyn, I mean, after my dad died early on when I was 11, and it was just me and my mom. And, it just seemed like, I would say it's probably longer than that, but it seemed like in 2 months we were on welfare. I mean, we had nothing. And eventually my grandfather had to come to live with us after my grandmother died, and we lived off of his Social Security check. So he had an old Gran Torino, which was his pride and joy. I mean, he'd go out and wax the thing every day, but he never drove it. I mean, he was older. He was in his probably late 70s, and I wound up talking him into letting me use that car. And
Okay.
I mean, that was a legendary car. Because I remember I'd show up to slot car tracks, turn it off, and the valves would smoke. I mean, people would come out and take pictures of it. I mean, it was the most embarrassing thing ever. So that was probably the car in Tony Bowers' picture.
Okay. All right.
The Gremlin was my first new car.
Wow. Stepped up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't see the whole car, so I couldn't tell what it was. I just remember I was like, wow, that's Ernie, like sitting in the trunk selling Trinity parts.
You sure that wasn't
crazy?
Sure that wasn't P?
No, that was you.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm just amazed. Like, I was always amazed, like, how Trinity started. Like, I remember reading stories about it started, like, basically, like, in a closet.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long story. I can go through it. I didn't think anybody would care about it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of listeners that don't know about that story. I mean, a lot of us hardcore guys do, but a lot of our fans probably don't know how that started.
Basically, I was, I used to race lot cars when I was a kid, and it's one of these things, probably like video games today. I went to a place called Polk's Hobby in New York City. I mean, that was back in the day when you could travel the subways, and it was a different world. I mean, it was much safer. But I mean, as a kid, I get a grammar school and hop on a train and go into the city. And I saw this slot car track in Polk's on Fifth Avenue and just fell in love with racing. And I just, I raced probably every day I could, and on weekends and things like that. I was just addicted to it. And I did fairly well at it. I was never really a great builder like Tony or Bob Emmett or people like that, but I had, really good reflexes, and I could drive the cars pretty good. So, basically I raced with Tony and Bob Emmett and, people like that back in the day. And then when it came time to go to college, I gave it up. I mean, at that time, I don't know if you know, you probably know, but I mean, I was studying to be a Roman Catholic priest. And when I got into college, that was the first step to going into a major seminary. So at that point in my life, I thought I wanted to become a priest. I figured it was over for slot car racing, so I just stopped. And, graduated college, and then obviously had a massive career change and decided to leave the seminary. And, got out, came back, and Tony was still racing. He was, building chassis, just in his mom's house. And I didn't have any money. And he said, why don't you just start racing again, and maybe you can build some cars. And, and we started racing. And that's what I was doing. I remember giving my mom the 1 year proverbial take off a year speech, like, Mom, let me take off 1 year. And if things don't work out, I'll go. I was going to go to law school. That was my plan B from the seminary. And, I took that year off, and we started racing. I mean, those were meager times. I mean, I remember Tony and I would drive to a race in Cincinnati or someplace, Columbus or wherever it was, and if we didn't win the race because it was cash prizes, we'd have to sell stuff out of our boxes to get home. I mean, we didn't have any money. I mean, when I think about some of the things we did back in the day, I don't know if it could ever be done today. I mean, it was just a different environment. But, I was traveling all over the country, racing and just building cars. And, loved it. I mean, I didn't have really any money at all. And then, Tony was still building the chassis. And I think he said to me one day, you should get into the motors. And at that point, I didn't know anything about an electric motor. But again, it was that whole, I don't know if you want to call it entrepreneurial spirit, because at that time I didn't think I knew what that was. But, I didn't think about, well, if I make a motor, I'm going to make $20 on it. I just wanted to make something and be successful. So I talked my mom into taking all the furniture out of the house. I mean, we lived in a 3-story walk up in Brooklyn. It was on the 3rd floor. There was, the living room, a kitchen, and the bedroom, which my grandfather lived in. Of course, we lived off of his Social Security, so he got the bed. I stripped all the furniture out of the living room and built wooden workbenches all around the outside of the walls. And my mom and I slept on these cheap, Chase lounges that you would see at, Walmart or something. The really plastic, crappy ones. That's what we slept on because there was no room. And that's where we're storing. I just, worked like that. I learned by the seat of my pants. And at that time, it was still slot car racing. And we had, I think it was Bob Emmett who had just saw the first radio control car. And I think Bob Rule had, or a Bolink, or maybe it was Don McKay of Joe Mack. And at that time, most of the slot car tracks were closing because the rents were so large. And the industry started to go down a little. Nobody could pay the rents. And I looked at this car, and, it was a crude RC car, but you could race it anywhere. And I remember, talking to Tony, and he was saying, how are we going to get into this? At that time, I was dynamically balancing slot car armatures. So, people ran the motors, took the motors apart, put them in an envelope, sent them to me, and I'd refurbish them. That was probably the majority of my business. And, I had this dynamic balancer, and I don't know, I think it was Tony said, well, we should take the balancer back and get it refurbished for radio control arms, and that's when we could start. And I remember we drove down to Virginia. Tony looked at the map and I said, how far is this place? He was like, no, it's like 4 hours from Brooklyn. I mean, obviously that was wrong. We were driving like 9 hours into it, and it was still probably another 5 hours. I think it was in Lynchburg. Make a long story short on that, we wound up getting in a car crash there. My Torino was totaled. Bob Emmett had to come and get us, but we had we changed the balancer over so we could, balance an RC arm. Again, we did no checking on whether this was a market at all. At that time, the RPMs were so small on a RC motor, there was no reason for rebalancing. So, I mean, the whole thing was a complete waste of time. But that's what got me into radio control. And I remember the first big race we went to this race at Ratty's, which was a famous track in Boston. I think it was in 79, 80. I don't remember exactly what it was, but Bob and Tony were racing RC cars, and we drove down there. And I tell this story a lot. It probably wasn't like this, but this is what it seemed to be. I mean, I was some dumpy little kid from Brooklyn. I had a hole in my T-shirt. I'm driving my father's Gran Torino that basically smoked till I turned it off. And we pull into this place, and the Associated's pits looked like they were from here to Virginia. I mean, it just looked like, it looked like Penske, but like 100 times. It looked like the whole track was racing for Associated. I mean, they had a guy, his name was Mike Rowland, and he just drove a panel truck of parts to each race. I mean, they were, just a huge company, as they are today, but it was incredible for me to see that. And I remember looking at Tony, I think I said, are you crazy? We're never going to compete with these guys. And we were lucky enough to have Joel Johnson. He was the only kid at that time that wasn't racing for Associated. I think his dad had a problem with them, or they didn't like each other or whatever. So Joel was the one guy in the world who wasn't racing for him. And I wound up, getting Joel to run Trinity. I mean, I think he was at that time 11 or 12, and we got some notoriety at that race. I mean, that was the day when you raced outdoor all day, and then you'd race indoor at night. So it was like 24 hours of racing. And we went to that race. I mean, I had like probably 6 total motors. You know, I'd run outdoor all day, and then we'd go in the indoor, and I'd just crank up the timing on the same motors, and we'd run those. You know, we had no battery packs. I mean, it was so bad. When Joel went out to race, we were running for MRP, and MRP had one set of opinions. And at that time, Gary Keyes was like the head honcho. You know, we had to wait for Gary to race. If I wanted to change ratios, Gary would come in. I'd have to get a rag and a wrench and take his pinion off so I wouldn't burn myself, and then put it on Joel's car. I mean, that's how meager it was at the beginning. But we got a little notoriety. At that point, it was all, you know, Reedy. I mean, obviously, he was the biggest, and then, you know, Big Jim at Checkpoint was trying to get a foothold into it. But, you know, I don't know if Joel won any of those events, but I think he got a couple of seconds and a third. And for us, it was a huge deal. And, you know, that was the first start we got. And then after that, it kind of propelled a little because we were approaching radio control like we did slot cars. And I think at that point, you know, maybe RC companies were just, you know, the motors didn't seem to mean much. They were working mostly on the cars, the setups, the tires, things like that. And the motor was an afterthought. And we took the opinion that we were going to try to make the motors faster. And, you know, we did a lot of things that other people weren't doing back in the day. We were pulling the magnets out. We were matching them. We were grinding them. We were using modular end belts. So the motors looked, you know, different. And, you know, at that point, at that time, I was getting motors from Mike. You know, at that time of the year, when people say to me, they're in the motor business, and, oh, it's so hard now. It's so hard to compete. I mean, you should have been back then. I mean, at that time, they had a legitimate cartel, which today would be illegal. I mean, I forgot who was in it. It was Mike and maybe Bob Rule and Don McKay at Jomac. And those were the only guys that could buy these motors. If you wanted to buy a motor, you had to ask for their permission. None of those guys would sell me except Mike Reedy. Mike Reedy basically helped me get into the motor business. I mean, he said, if this guy wants to get in, let him in. And, you know, I'd buy 100 or 200 motors from Mike. That was it. That's all I could afford.
Yeah.
So that was the start. I mean, how it took off was, you know, it was Joel. And I forgot what year it was, but, you know, Joel had a really good year, and most people had favored him that he might win the world championships. And I decided at that point we were going to go to Japan for the Japanese nationals, and told Joel, you know, he'd have to skip the Worlds, which I think he really had a great shot at winning. And, you know, he didn't really complain that much. I mean, he was not only was he a great driver, he was a great kid, as you know, and he was all about the team. I mean, he'd do anything for me and vice versa. And we went to Tokyo. And, you know, I think I told you this story. I mean, we had no money at all. I took everything I had as savings and bought 2 tickets to Tokyo. And my dream was I was going to deal with Kyosho. I heard Kyosho was making another motor. So it was a Yokomoto Reedy, and everybody was buying the motors there. And I was going to get my own motor. So, you know, this is how naive I was. At that time, we didn't have faxes, so I had a telex. And I telex over to Kyosho and basically tell them that I'm arriving for this Japan Nationals, and I want to meet with them. I don't get an answer back right away, but I think it was a day before or 2 days before we left, I get a telex back from Kyosho basically saying, thanks, but no thanks. We have no interest in meeting you. We don't know who you are, and there's no meeting. So, I mean, I'm sitting there saying, wow.
Wow. Oh, my God.
So we get on the plane anyway because we had nothing else. I mean, the tickets were non-refundable, nothing I could do. And we get there, and like most Japanese races at that time, they built a race track in a mall. Beautiful, but I mean, you know, there was no practice. So when we got there, it was carpet, 6 cell, which we didn't run much of, and 3 qualifiers, and there's no practice. And we missed the first qualifier because we couldn't we couldn't figure out when Joel was up. They were calling the race in Japanese. And the second qualifier, Joel got hit right on the line. The radio was, just going bonkers, so we were out of that. I mean, I remember the KO guys coming over, who I didn't know at that point, but they were really gracious. They came over, they checked the radio. Joel was running a KO, gave him a different module and a different crystal. That time we were using crystals and stuff. And I remember there was the third qualifier. Joel was just about ready to start. And I did something I probably should have never done. And I think he was 12. And I walked up to him and I said, Joel, good luck. My entire future and everything I'm ever going to be as a man is going to be based on the next 8 minutes, which is
wow.
ridiculous amount of pressure to put on a kid. And they said 3, 2, 1, go, and he just annihilated them. I mean, he had no trouble with the with the radio, and obviously had no trouble getting around the track. I think he won the race by 3 laps. At that time, Masami was there, and a couple other. They were younger guys, obviously, but I mean, we were mobbed after the race, and Japanese at that time very inquisitive. They couldn't understand how we could take a Japanese motor, which was a Yokomo, and run it, make it much better than what they were running. And I got a tap on the shoulder from a young Japanese kid who said, basically Kyosho's made a mistake. We'd like to meet you tomorrow. And later on, I found out that kid was Aki Suzuki, the son of the owner, Hisashi Suzuki of Kyosho. He took it upon himself to, extend the invite. And we went over the next morning, and again, like the vision was associated, I walked into Hisashi's office, and to me, it probably looked like, 15,000 square feet. It probably wasn't, but it was probably bigger than Trinity's office. And I'm, pleading out my case. At that point in his office, I'm starting to realize, okay, great. You've gotten in, the owner of Kyosho's office. Joel's won the Japanese Nationals. There's one problem. You don't have any money to buy the motors. So at that point, I had to switch directions and basically, ask him for credit. That if he would give me motors on credit, we would share the technology with him, and I'd do everything I could to help him, and yada, yada, yada. I was talking through a translator, a guy named Mori Matsumoto at that time, who was talking to Hisashi, who really never spoke any English at that meeting. And, we bowed and left, and I went home, and I got no response, and I figured that was it. And about 2 weeks after that, I got a telex from Mori Matsumoto, the translator, saying that Mr. Suzuki is going to trust you, and 500 motors are on the way. And I mean, you're just completely blown away. And, we got the motors, started working on them. Joel was really successful with them. And I think it was probably a year and a half after that, we were selling 30,000 motors a month. I mean, we were Kyosho's largest motor company. And it was a runaway train. I mean, we were on I think it was page 3 of the Wall Street Journal, private company goes crazy, I forgot what the headline was, but I mean, it was just insane. And, I was just in the right place at the right time. And, had a lot of help, from Reedy, from Joel, from Kyosho. I mean, it was all a set of my mom. It was just all a set of things because I was in the right place and I had good people helping me. I mean, Tony, and it just all worked. I mean, I remember the hardest thing I ever had to do was going back to Kyosho and telling them that my dream was to get, in Japanese type business at that time, I don't know if it's still like that, we don't do it in Japan anymore, but there was always a middleman. You never could get to the end manufacturer. So whoever was actually making the motor, it wasn't Kyosho. Kyosho was the middleman. And they had given me my start. So it's difficult to say to him, we're at a point now where we need to go to the next point, and I can't buy the motors from you. I need to go to the end user. And I think that was the thing. He was gracious and said he understood, and we went directly to the company. And at that time, we had a huge edge in price. We had a vision to put the motors in packaging, which we designed here. So when we got the motors that came in, our motors are completely finished. We did the design work here, the engineering on the motor here, the packaging here. So when we got 30,000 motors in, they were ready to ship. Whereas other companies at that time, if they got an order for 500 motors, even if the motors were done, it would take them probably a week just to package them in poly bags. So that kind of inventory and turnover, the distributors loved us because we could deliver in a market that was, obviously, could take anything we could give them. And that was probably the biggest step. I mean, Joel winning that race and Kyocera giving us the start, and then Kyocera being understanding to get it to the end user. I mean, the end, whoever the maker was. And when we did that, we had such a huge price advantage. And not only price, when you can talk to the actual vendor who's making the motor, you can make changes. You can get different technology you can use that you don't have privy to if you go into a middleman. So, I mean, that's the story in a nutshell, really.
What year are we at right now when you started going right to the vendor?
We'll probably somewhere in the 80s. 80s, early 90s.
When was your first building?
The first building, I mean, it's another funny story where people are listening is probably going to say, this guy's an idiot. but I mean, I was living in Brooklyn, and I was working in a small back room at BIR Hobby Shop in New Jersey. And it was me, Tony, and another guy called Kenny Piccola. And we would work all day and build the motors there and, probably quit at about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. At that point, I would drive back to Brooklyn, give the motors to my mom. My mom would stay up all night and package everything, pack the boxes. I'd get up the next morning and go right to the depot and ship them. So it was like a 24-hour deal. I mean, my mom... my mom worked at home. We had a small thing set up there where she packaged, and then we were at BIR. And then what happened, which forced me to move out of there, was the first year I started to make some money. This was before we were selling $30,000 a month. I didn't pay any taxes, and when I went to talk to an accountant to get some advice, he said, "Well, the first thing you got to do is get in one state," because I was living in Brooklyn and I was working in Jersey, so I had two taxes. And, as I made most decisions at that time, which was ridiculous, I drove over the Gospels Bridge, and the first town was Linden, New Jersey. So I said, well, I'll just find some place here. and then I was in the first building. I think it was 1,300 square feet, and I walked in. It was like a 25 units of 1,500 square feet, and we had one unit. And I walked in with Tony, and I said, I remember like yesterday. I looked at him and I said, how the hell are we going to fill this up? I mean, we didn't have enough stuff for that. And I'd say probably we're there for a year or two, and we had, I think, 23 of the 25 units. They just kept blowing holes in the wall. And, we stayed there for a long time. And then from there we went to a building, which I think that was Meridian after that, wasn't it? I can't even remember. I remember I bought that building in Edison, and we went from there. Went from renting to buying this building in Edison, and that's where we had our greatest success, I think.
Yeah, that factory was huge.
Yeah, we had a ton of employees. I mean, it was we had several people in accounting. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
At that time, I could walk into a bank and get any amount of money I wanted. Now the same guys are saying, "Who are you?"
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and plus Edison, New Jersey, you were there for quite a while, and then you move to Florida. In what?
No.
Oh.
I think from there we went to Piscataway, or no, maybe Piscataway was before Edison. Yeah, Piscataway was the next step. It was renting again, but it was a bigger place, much bigger.
Right. Okay.
And then from Piscataway, I bought the building in Edison. And,
right.
The problem with Edison, which I'm sure most people know and maybe some people don't, I went through a very bad divorce. It removed me from the business quite a bit. At the same time, I went through, open heart surgery, which, removed me from the business. And, things just started to go south. And at that point, I had to make the decision that I want to take care of my kids and raise them, or that I just want to take care of the business. And I had to take care of the kids. And, that kind of, that empire or whatever that we had back then, it just couldn't sustain everything that was happening. And when I moved to Florida 6 years ago, honestly, I didn't even think I was going to reopen Trinity. I had really had it. I mean, I was in probably the worst situation in my mind in my life. I was just going to retire. I was going to just forget about Trinity altogether and just raise the kids and try to enjoy life. And, that lasted for about a year, and I got bored. And, we started off down here. And, here we are now. I mean, it's Trinity now is on a smaller scale, but I can see the same seeds that I saw back then. I mean, I'm going to work every day again, and this has been going on for about 2 years. We have goals we're setting, and things are moving great. I mean, so I'm pretty happy right now.
Yeah, and you guys seem to be coming back in the mix of things. I mean, there's some chatter back there that Trinity's coming back, and
we're back, baby.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to make that climb back up. And, But yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of people wondering, like, well, what happened to Trinity? Well, I mean, right there it is. I mean, I know that, the whole divorce thing really took a toll on you, and then, like you said, probably your failing health came from that divorce pressure, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it removed you from the industry, and you had to make a choice. And now you're regrouping and doing some things and making a comeback.
Yeah, I mean, the divorce took 3 years, and when you're in court for 3 years, and when you're trying to raise 3 kids, and at that time my youngest daughter was 6 months old, and at the same time I had staples in my chest. So, I like to tell people another story where people talk about money or whatever. I say, when you're on an aluminum slab nude and they run you into the operating room and all you see are those lights, you really don't care how many zeros you have in your checking account anymore. All you care about is getting off that table. And, most people say you get revelation when something that bad happens. Well, I think I did. I mean, I got a new lease on life, and I just appreciated my life a lot more. And the things that are really important, like your family or your kids or whatever, I mean, I when in the old days, I mean, I get up at 5, drive an hour to work because I lived in Saddle River, work till about 8:30, drive home, and get home at 9:30 at night, and run straight into my office at home, and then start the whole thing all over again. And I was working 6-7 days a week. Eventually, it's just something goes.
Ernie would email me like 3 a.m. and stuff with, and I'd be like, and it'd be like, how come you're not responding to me? I'm like, I'm not up at 3 a.m, dude.
That's the joke in the industry now. Don't give Ernie your email address. Somebody said that to me today. I forgot who it was, and they were at the place, and I said, give me your email address, and the guy kind of looked at me funny, and he said, everybody says not to give you the email address. I don't want to get emails I get at 4 a.m. was so bad back then. I mean, I was so motivated or crazy. I mean, I was sleeping with my BlackBerry. I mean, it's nuts.
You don't do that now?
No. No. I still work hard, but, trying to get a balanced life, and especially for them. And honestly, I work 4 days a week. So
I'm losing a little bit there, Ernie. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm working 4 days a week now. And sometimes I'll go in myself on the weekends, but, I'm trying to do more stuff with that.
Now, how close is Trinity to you now?
Now we're really close. I mean, we were far before, but now I'm within 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's easy, yeah.
And you still, Tony P moved down with you, and he's still there, I see, on Facebook. I see his pictures and stuff. Looking good?
Yeah. He's doing well. He's married. So...
Poor lady.
Right? He's still as grumpy as ever.
What's the typical day like for you then? Like now, that's one of the questions that fans like to hear. They like to hear like when you wake up and stuff. So obviously you're not up all night anymore like you used to be. Now you get up at what? I think you're up by 5:30 according to your Facebook statuses and stuff.
A typical day for me is I get up at 5 a.m. I like if the kids are in school, I'll grab a quick cup of coffee, check some email, and then I've got to get them up at 5:30. Breakfast. My 2 older ones who go to high school have to be dropped off by like 6:20. Drop them off, come back, and then Jules, who's in Railway Grammar School, has to be dropped off by 7:15. At 7:15, I drop her off, and I'm off to work. And Jules goes to aftercare. Nick and Ina can come home themselves by bus. And I'll pick up Jules at about, 5:30, get home, make dinner, work on homework, whatever, and start the second shift. And that's the way it is.
Yeah, you make a hell of a dinner, too. I see some of those photos.
I never could cook at all, but, with the divorce and everything, I was your typical, male husband. I couldn't boil water. But I get into cooking now. It calms me down, and, I really like it. Last year, I had qualified to go on that Master Chef. I didn't go because it was a month away from home in California, but I had made the cut to go on the show. So I guess my stuff's okay.
Good. I still have yet to make it down there for one of those famous dinners, but I will someday, and I will be staying at the house, hanging out for about a week.
You gotta come down when D12 and the Lakers come into town.
Oh, man. I sure hope he's not on the team. But anyway, are you promising me that a courtside seat on the air? Huh? Are you going to promise me courtside?
Sure. You got it.
All right.
If Rona can't go, yeah.
Oh. Damn it, that Rona. I kick him off the show.
Rona, I already promised Rona courtside seats when Jordan makes his comeback.
Oh, man. Surprised we haven't heard about that yet, his comeback.
Yeah.
Because I think recently he said he could play in the NBA still. That he thinks he feels that he can still do it. I thought I saw that on ESPN or something.
He can't do it. He can't do it like he used to. I'm sure in this pathetic league, he could probably score 20 a night. For me, just to get on the NBA a little, the self-proclaimed king, LeBron, how great he is. There's nobody playing. The next best guy is Durant. At a no-touch rule. Let's see him play in the 80s against the Pistons, where they bring you to the floor, and you're playing against guys like Bird, Magic, Barkley, Karl Malone, all Hall of Famers. It's crazy when people compare him. I think the closest thing to Jordan is always been Kobe. He's got the moves. He's got an athletic game. He doesn't just run all over people and hold for a whistle.
Yeah. I love LeBron's game. Back up,
Yeah.
And then run full speed at the basket.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I probably wouldn't stand in front of him anymore either. Although, who's the guy on the Bulls? Heinrich became my hero when he tackled them to the floor a couple of times when they stopped that streak. Man, I saw the Bulls. The Bulls came to Orlando, and Heinrich was walking past my spot, and I said, "You're my hero." And he said, "Why?" I said, "You're the first guy that stood up for LeBron and took him to the floor." He just laughed and walked away.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, there's the NBA talk, fans. We always talk NBA every week.
Yeah.
There you go.
What did you say, Kirby? Oh, yeah. That's right. You're not there.
Yeah. He claims he's out on a date. I really doubt that. But anyway.
Kirby's still on first base. I guarantee you that.
So anyway, we put out there that you were going to be on the show. Everybody was excited. I asked for emails and, any questions you have for Ernie. And, the biggest topic, of course, was everybody wanted to know about the Roar situation when they took your motor off the approval list. And that seems to be the most of the questions we got. I probably got at least 45 emails or more of the same question about Roar.
How many were from Roar?
But anyway, that was the main question. So if we could maybe just touch on that and please some fans a little. We don't have to go deep into it, but obviously it was put back on the approval list. And, pretty much everything was settled now. I mean, but if you want to touch on that, I don't know what you can say and stuff, but go ahead.
I mean, the gist of it was like most arguments, two people or let's say Roar and Trinity having a difference of opinion on what happened. From my perspective, at that time when we submitted the D35 17.5, we submitted it to an independent lab, which is one of the great things that Roar put in. It was headed up by Bob Ingersoll. And the process is for everybody, not just me, you send in your samples to the lab, and they technically go through it. And if they say this is a go, it meets all the specs or whatever, they'll take the epoxy off the wire, they'll measure the wire, they'll measure the stators, everything. And if they come back to you and say this is a go, at that point you make the motor. Nobody's making 20,000 motors without an approval that it's going to be legal. And then after you get the approval, then it has to go to the executive board, and they make the final approval to say this motor goes to the market. So we got that. I mean, the motor was legal for 10 months. And, for the past 20, 25 years, the way we measured motors, everybody, is, you take the epoxy off a certain way because, you've got temperature's got to be right. The process has got to be right to get it off, because when you get the thing too hot, the wire swells, and you measure it with a micrometer or caliper or whatever. And this was my point. I could take 25 motors, or you could take 25 motors from any hobby shop you want right now and measure them that way, and all of them are legal. But somewhere between then and then, Roar decided that they were going to change the way they test the motor. They used a different piece of equipment, which obviously they say is more accurate. We never got like a sheet of paper which says it doesn't clear this or it doesn't clear that. We got a phone call at midnight. I think it was January 18th, saying your motor's taken off the approved list. And from our perspective, that was our sign. That's what we felt is wrong. On Roar's side, even though they changed the way they test the motors, the parameters, at that time Steve Pond was the president. His mindset was, I don't care if I change the parameter or not, this is the rule and it's DQ'd. Going through 6 months or whatever in court, we never got to court, but through the lawyers. I mean, the difference between the wire was half of a hair follicle.
Wow.
Which most, lawyers that were involved in this case, regardless of who they represented, thought the case was crazy. And it probably was. I mean, we both spent a lot of money, and there's bad will still and whatever. But Steve Merck, who's the new law president, came into the picture after he got elected in January. And, we flew to Washington, D.C. in June and, hashed it out. Like, two guys, and the lawyers were there, but basically Steve and I just hashed it out. I mean, he's a good guy. I think he's a patient guy. I think he's open-minded. He listened to my explanation. I listened to his. We didn't necessarily agree on everything, which you never do. But at the end of the day, in 6 or 7 hours, we came to an agreement, which I think is good for both sides. I mean, people say to me, well, is the agreement good? I mean, my thing is, if both parties think they didn't get a good deal, it's normally a good deal because it's fair. And, that nightmare is over, not only for me. I mean, honestly, we felt we had to bring the lawsuit for several reasons, and it really wasn't about, Trinity team drivers or whatever, but we sold an enormous amount of those motors to consumers everywhere, nationwide and overseas. And part of the reason why people bought those motors was because Roar approved that motor. So, I mean, we both needed to take some responsibility for that. And I think at the end of the day, Steve Merck said, look, these people did pay their money. We approved this for whatever, those people should be allowed to use their motor, which was my point all along. And, for me, there were two solid points in this, that we were hoping for. One was that people could use the motor again, that felt they bought this motor and it now became a paperweight. And two was to get the independent labs restored. And I think that's a great thing for racing, not only for me, but for everybody. And Roar's agreed to do that. And I think it's September 1, the Roar independent labs will be back in force. And, I think Roar's, making some good changes. They really want the organization now to be transparent. So, people know what's going on. And I think if, they come through with, a lot of what they're saying, and I think Steve Merck's going to be a good leader for them, I think it can only help all of us. I mean, we need to put the divisiveness, beside and just get back to having fun and growing this industry.
Yeah, and boy, during that whole time, you got a lot of support from a lot of customers and tracks, I noticed on Facebook. There was even a page started.
I was amazed. I mean, the outpour. I mean, naturally, you have some people that don't agree with you, but for the most part, I mean, the backing we got from our customers and friends was just, I was shocked. I was, floored. I mean, it was just great.
And I said on the podcast during that time, I said, I think this kind of re-energized you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty energized. I mean, you got to figure. I mean, I think last year, I mean, we sold by far the most Brussels motors of anyone, and we were on a roll, and then this comes, and it kind of derailed us a little. But I try to stay focused on what we needed, and I think what we needed was these customers again to not only have faith in me, but to have faith in Roar too, that they can believe when Roar says you can buy this motor, right. You can. And I think Steve Merck, deserves some credit for that because, I think people are going to respect Roar for that. I mean, it's bigger than just this small racing community, which a lot of racers don't understand that the market's much bigger than that. I mean, we need a space for everyone. but we can't just dedicate everything towards racing. I mean, there's a lot of people that depend on these rules to be raced all over the world. You know, people like countries like Australia, France, they're still running raw rules. So, you know, it has wide impact.
Well, again, yeah, you had a lot of fan support. It was almost like everybody circled the wagon there, you know, like, it was really cool to see that at the time, actually. Yeah. I mean, it was not cool what happened, but just to see the support and everything. And yeah, and I think you realized then, too, like, wow, we got a lot of customers and fans out there that are backing us up here. And I don't know. I just think it kind of, like, I always said, like, it woke up the sleeping giant a little and created this buzz. And, hey, sometimes controversy is good, so.
Like Reggie Johnson says, as long as you spell the name right.
Exactly. Well, hey, there it is in a nutshell, fans that were asking. So that was, you know, everything's good now, and hopefully everything remains that way. Like you said, new president, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and I got to say, you know, over the years, I've been a pretty big adversary of Roar. But, you know, this is the first time I think I feel that there's good growth potential here, and I finally think manufacturers, not only me, but other manufacturers too, are going to find that maybe finally we're going to be able to work hand in hand. I mean, I think, you know, sometimes racers think that the manufacturers want to run Roar, and that's not the case at all. I mean, I certainly don't want to. I don't have enough time to do that. But what I'd like to do is bring my input into it from 32 years of being in the business and just put my input in and then let Roar vote on it. But, I mean, sometimes if they don't have any input from any of the guys who have the most vested interest in this is how we make our living. It's hard, I think, to pass votes or pass rule changes when all your affiliates have no idea what's going on.
And, you know, we were talking, now, you know, you mentioned brushless motors, and, of course, the other big question we got from a few fans, but Russell Boyd in California asked your opinion.
What up, Russell?
He asked what is Ernie's opinion on brushless compared to brush? And I listened to an interview you did at the Snowbirds recently, and I know you mentioned how you feel that brush motors are actually better for the industry.
Well, I mean, it depends what the definition of best is, but I mean, I think with that interview, they asked me what my perception would be if the industry didn't change, if we were still running brush motors and nickel metal hydride. And I think this goes back to kind of like, without calling anybody out or trying to be disrespectful to anybody, because I'm not. But at that time, I think Dawn was the president of Roar, and I think she was trying to do as good a job as she could do. But at that time in the industry was rocking. I mean, brush motors were doing good, nickel metal hydride sales were good, RC cars in general were good, and the brushless motors were brought up, and these LiPo batteries were brought up. And again, I think they made that change too quickly without doing enough research on it. I mean, there's a lot of things that people, listening or just go in and buy a pack or something at a hobby shop don't really realize the pains that a lot of the manufacturers have gone through with this LiPo. I mean, there's constant rule regulations. There's constant shipping regulations. You can't ship a LiPo battery pack to the USPS anymore, Postal Service. You have to ship that FedEx or UPS. There has to be special, documents, hazardous documents. The shipping cost on the batteries versus a nickel metal hydride to a LiPo are ridiculous. Brushless. I mean, you remember the old brushless myth. And I remember, I'm going to call a spade, with Bob Novak telling us that, you put this brushless motor in, they all run the same and they never blow up.
Yeah.
That is not true. I'm not saying Bob was lying. I'm saying Bob didn't realize that it wasn't a true statement. I mean, every brushless motor is different. I mean, if it was all the same, if every motor ran exactly the same, racing would be over anyway. There'd be absolutely no reason to race. It'd be all the same speed all the way around the track. But like every electric motor, there's some difference in consistency. There's still some Chinese girl or an American worker, whoever it is got a hand wind that stator. That maybe he's having a tough day, or maybe she's having a tough day, and there's some variance. There's still going to be some variance in the rotor material and the magnet material. I mean, it's not, all it's cracked up to be. And from my perspective, in an economy that we exist in now, I think it's way more difficult for a dad to go into a hobby shop, buy a car kit, whatever car kit, and then buy $150 LiPo pack and $150, brushless motor. And that's a big investment up front, where he could have bought, a $30 brush motor and a $50 or $60 nickel metal hydride pack. I mean, it's a different, going to the counter, it's different. I mean, it's the old thing when we were making on-road cars. You remember, I wanted to make the best on-road car with all the parts in the car. I mean, everything in the box, aluminum pieces, whatever. We never could outsell Associated on the cars. And I always say to myself, why? Our car's so much better. The problem is the 12L or whatever kit they had, the kit was reasonably priced. They didn't have any extra. So you bought the car and then you bought the aftermarket parts. And you could buy the parts when you wanted to. It wasn't as big a hit as it was when you bought one of our cars. And I think that's what's happening with brushless. Sure, brushless is better if you're just going to knock around in the backyard. You and Kirby are going to goof around and just run over each other. Yeah, from that point, brushless is better. But from a race standpoint, it's exactly the same or worse than what we did before. I mean, come to a big race. Anybody that says, Charlie or Dieter or any of these guys aren't doing more work than they used to do, have never been to an on-road race. I mean, they're still looking for a half of a tenth of a second somewhere. The battery packs, if you run them too long, they puff. As soon as they puff and swell, they're no longer any good. How many battery manufacturers are replacing the puff packs? I don't, it's just a lot of variables there. I just think we'd be better off. And then, look at an old brush motor versus one of these. I guess I'm old school, but to me, I love the way the brush motors look. They look like a real motor, not an aluminum bar with two shafts sticking out. But I mean, it's to each his own. I mean, I think racing is good today. I mean, it's okay. I wish we had more entries at races. I think there's many, many reasons why we don't, or that can be better. I think when our economy comes back, if it does, that'll make it better. I think war can make it better. I think people need to stop being divisive and try to work together, whether you're an outlaw club or whatever. You got to put the fun back into this. Stop, insinuating that anybody who's fast is cheating. We've been going through that for 30 years. I think that fun's got to be instilled into it, and that's when people talk about the old days. That's why the old days were so good. I mean, I remember when the second Cleveland ended, whatever it was, 8:01 on a Sunday night. 8:02, I was thinking about next year. I mean, that just doesn't happen anymore. I couldn't wait to get there to see the Associated guys or to see Reedy or see what big teams were coming in. It just doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. And, there's no rivalries really because they're all gone. I mean, Gene and Roger, Pops, that was a big rivalry, Losi and Associated. I mean, they're still there, but those characters that made racing, as much as I disagreed with Gene in probably everything, he was a character. I mean, sure, I wanted to beat Gene, and Gene wanted to beat me, But I mean, those are the guys that made this industry. Pop Slocy, Joe Mack, Don McKay. It was just, great. We need that again. We need to have some legitimate rivalries that aren't hate-filled and just good fun. Like every other sport has. Why do you watch NASCAR? And you got your fan and you got a guy you want to boo for.
Right. So how do you think we get back to those days, though, as far as getting the rivalries back?
I think probably war for big racing anyway probably has the most influence in that, and I think they're on the road. I mean, I went to the West Palm Beach Nationals in Florida a couple of weeks back. It was the first war race I had been to in a long time. And I got to say, they had this race crew, Jimmy Babcock, a few other people, and they came in and they run the race. I mean, they had their own tent set up. They did their own tech. They ran their own race. It was a pretty sweet deal. I think that's a great start. I think if war becomes more and more transparent, and I don't understand why we don't have a driver's, like a seeding like they do in tennis or golf. Who's the number one driver in the world? Who's the number two? Who's number three? You get rid of a lot of these people who are sandbagging. Guys that have been racing for 20 years that are still running stock. I mean, honestly, not to sound like but I mean, if I put myself and a couple of other team guys in a room with a computer and a program, we could set up a seating list for the whole country in probably 2 hours. And then you could say, 1 to 50 is running, pro, and 50 to whoever run stock. And that's another thing I'd like to see. I'd like to see getting rid of all these millions of classes and go back to what we used to. You got a modified class and you got a stock class, the 17.5. That's it. And I think the difference, if you walk into a track and you see these two huge classes, if you're a spectator, and then you see what we got today, you got 57 classes with 5 cars in each heat, it's a lot more impressive to see the two classes. And at the local level, you're going to get more entries in those particular classes. I mean, it's got to be exciting. You got to draw people in to spend this kind of money. I mean, what do we got? I mean, a lot of people say they want to slow the cars down. Personally, I think that's a mistake. I mean, I think all we have in this industry is speed. We're selling speed. Once the speed is gone, you might as well build a model. And if you're going to run the course so around the track where it's no longer fun, I think that's another problem. Although, I must say, I think the vintage, Trans Am series is great. And I, with the Formula Ones, I think this year F1 is going to be really big with that BTA series. They limit the motor, they limit the battery. But I think once those rules become clearer and more well-defined by VTA, hopefully we'll all get together, I think, that could be a beginning again of some entry-level people coming in, because it's a much smaller entry price to get into that. And I think we need that. You need to build some sort of a bridge. You need to get some people from the local track and get them into this series of big-time racing. But, I mean, if you had seated drivers, you could have maybe 5 big races across the country and then have the same thing golf or tennis has. This is the number 1 driver in the world. This is the number 2. I mean, people want to reach or attain goals. Right now, there's probably like 400 races, and none of them are connected.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, A-scale, you could say, most of the associate guys like Cavallari or, all these guys are normally, those guys are going to be in the top 5 guys. But, if you had that for each scale, I think it's a cool idea. I think those guys want to fight it out to be number 1. And then you got the guys who aren't so, that kind of dedicated, can't race every day, can't quit their job and race at a factory, but they still want to race. They run in the 17.5 class. You do the same thing there. Who's the number 1 17.5 class driver in the world? Who's number 2? You do the same thing they do with golf. the Masters is worth this many points, Cleveland's worth this many points, whatever. It's easy to figure out.
I love it.
Yeah, I think it's, I think you got to give people incentive. You got to give them a reason to do this. It can't just be tedious. So you go to the track and try to be your friend. After a while, I think that's old.
Yeah.
I'd rather run over you or Kirby with an 8-scale truck, especially Kirby. I cannot believe that Kirby dissed me. He was at other broadcasts except mine. For a woman?
Well, no, he's for a chick.
I think Kirby should come up tomorrow and at least tell us what base he got to, even if it is a lie.
I agree. Maybe I should text him and see what base he's on right now.
Yeah.
Text him quick, see if he responds.
Tell him he's getting beat up pretty bad by not being here.
Not here to defend himself, and we'll run him over.
Yep. Wait a minute! Breaking news! I just got a breaking news from ESPN. Dwight has just announced that he will not be able to make a decision by Friday.
Love it. Thank you. You got me all excited there for a second. All right. Well, okay. Let's skip around here. We'll bounce around. I got a few questions, and then I'll let you go.
Give me some hard questions.
Well, I don't got nothing hard, but
somebody's got to want some dirt out there. Come on, guys.
Well, we did have a question. Let me. I think we answered that one from Rustin. Here's one from Tyler Weaver. He wants to know, does Trinity plan to get back into making aluminum or graphite hop-ups again? Example, Matt Francis Kinwald type optional parts.
Yeah, probably not, because, again, different part of the industry. Back then, when we were doing the Matt Francis line and the Kinwald line, I think a lot of the cars back then had very brittle plastic parts. We were, like most people, maybe making the same exact part out of aluminum or changing it a little and making it of aluminum with different colors. But again, you've got like Losi owned by Horizon. And when we ran into the trouble was we sell to just about every distributor. But some distributors didn't want to promote Losi because, they didn't have it. And when you get to that point, when you're making aluminum parts, you cut your volume down by a third or fourth. It's hard to keep up with that volume. So we decided at that point to pull out. You got companies like RPM who's doing a great job of selling aftermarket parts. My vision now is to stay within what we know. And we have so much more work to do with electric motors and batteries, even say. Right now I've got 4 battery lines. B, which is our, inexpensive line. We've got titanium, which is carried by most of the distributors, which is a great product, but at a low-level price. You got the RevTech 100C, which is one of our best packs and probably the most famous. And you got the Sting packs, which are, probably our biggest high-end pack. So we got 4 lines there. It takes a lot just to order those and keep up to the specs and the changes and et cetera. I want to get into some electric flight. And again, that's going to take more time. I want to get more into the 8-scale electric. We're in the process now of revamping our whole off-road line, our quad motors and our 8-scale motors. We had them with one vendor, which we didn't really have as much success as I liked. I think the motors were fast, but we had quality control problems with them. We're now moving that with all new designs to our D35 vendor. And I know the motors are going to be incredible, and we're going to try to get more involved into that segment of the market and off-road. We got J.R. Mitch now. He's doing a lot of testing. John Benoit. We have a lot of people locally that are helping us, and I'm really pretty excited about that. So I want to try to stay more focused on motors and batteries and, working on, a lot of new product, accessory items, but they don't necessarily deal with cars. And the other thing is with cars, I mean, I think if for somebody selling products like mine, motors and batteries, I need to be somewhat neutral. I mean, if I start making stuff for Associated or something like that, or Losi, or I get tied in with one manufacturer or another, I limit myself on who wants to run a Trinity motor or a Trinity battery pack or whatever. I mean, honestly, I don't care who runs the Trinity pack or Trinity motor. My objective is to get it across the finish line first. I mean, if somebody's got a Trinity motor that's running an Associated car, I'm going to do everything I can to help them at the race. I don't see the car anymore. What I see is, promoting my brand.
Very good there. You mentioned John Bernard.
Yeah.
Actually, we have a question here from John Bernard somewhere here.
What up, John? What up?
Where you at, John Bernard? Usually he's on Skype. I could probably even, if he was on, I could have called him and get him on here for you. Well, you touched on this already. We really don't need to jump into it. But John did, John wanted to, he said, brushless motors and light bulbs were a huge change for RC. How hard was it to make the jump and stay on the leading edge? And having advanced so far, where can we go from here? Well, I mean, we already touched on all that with the light bulbs and brushless.
Yeah. I mean, we can make big jumps. I mean, the problem is the more jumps you make, the more expense you bring. I mean, there's more technology that we're not even using, but it's too expensive now.
He says, can you tell Ernie thanks for the great products and an opportunity to be on the team?
Yeah, thank you for representing, John.
And that he does. He is everywhere racing.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Another question from... we got a question from Bew Curley. This goes back to slot cars, Ernie. He says, as a national champion slot car racer, is there anything that Ernie thinks could bring back the popularity of wing car racing? Or is it on its deathbed? Now you are racing slot cars, I see, on your Facebook page and stuff. Nick racing?
I was racing a lot. Unfortunately, our slot car center, which was about 10 minutes from my house, closed a few months back. And I got pretty talked about it, and I haven't raced since. Tony is still racing, but he's driving a lot. Because, now if he's got a race at let's say a place in Jacksonville, he still races the way we used to. He'll go the week before and practice and then drive back and then go to the race. And I just haven't had time to get involved in it. I think I'm going to go to the next race with him, which is at the Viper Pit. But wing cars, I mean, all I can say is for me, I mean, when I raced as a kid, the cars obviously didn't go anywhere near as fast as they did. I don't even know what the records are now, but I remember I had the world record for the Blue King track at 500 laps. I mean, they probably do 700 or 800.
I'm losing you a little bit, Ernie.
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Ernie's, by the way, Ernie fades in and out because he's in his Dwight Howard locker that he has in his his house.
I have Dwight's locker, and I'm just hoping and praying someday he comes back to the Magic. I'll tell you a quick funny story about Dwight, but you got to get me back on this topic, which we're on, which I already forgot about. But, I've sat next to that bench for, I don't know how many, 5, 6 years. I mean, I've been like 2 inches from Dwight and, built him some RC cars the whole route. He's never said a word to me. Okay, when he came back here as a Laker, that time to Orlando, I mean, the whole place was out for him. I mean, I was screaming at the top of my lungs from the side. I mean, that was the first time that Dwight said some shit to me that I can't repeat. But it was nice to understand that he did recognize me.
Well,
what were we talking about? About
the popularity of wing car racing and slot cars. Do you think it's dead, or it could make a comeback?
I hate to say this, but personally, I think it's dead. I mean, I can't even. I tried coming back to run a wing car. I couldn't even follow the car. It was so fast. I mean, basically, the way it is now is you run the car almost flat punched around the whole track. if it falls off, you build a new car. I mean, to me, there's no racing involved in that. I mean, what they're trying to get going, which Tony's been a big proponent of, and Ron Hirschman and Joey Neumeister, they're doing this retro class, which is old school chassis, no wings on the cars. You actually got to drive the cars, and it's fun. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it, and you know, as that builds, I think that could help slot car racing. But, you know, slot car racing still faced with the same pitfalls they had when I was a kid. I mean, one, the rents are still too high. Two, it's an industry in a cocoon, you know, run by a few distributors that don't want anybody to know about it. So nothing's changed as far as I'm concerned, unfortunately. And how long ago was that? You know, 30 years ago. So I wish I had better news, but that's just my perspective. I think they get way more. If they get way more flexi entries, you know, probably 10 to 1 than they would at a wing car right nationals. I mean, I think the last wing car nationals didn't even have a main event. I think they had less than 8 drivers. I could be wrong, but I only know what Tony tells me, which is probably all slanted towards retro.
Let's see. Richard Barnett from Texas asked, will we ever see a Trinity off-road team again? Now, you just signed J.R. Mitch, so I think that's what's bringing this question up.
Yeah, I mean, what's the guy's name again? I'm sorry.
Richard Barnett from Texas. Richard Barnett.
Hey, Richard. I mean, we definitely do. I mean, big-time off-road racing now, which I call big-time racing, would be like the Cavaliers and people like that. They're all linked into car companies. And, you know, it's very hard. All those guys are paid their contracts, and it's hard to secure a big-name driver. We're getting back into off-road with JR's help, and we're going to do it the slow way, which I believe is the right way. And probably
Ernie, for some reason I'm losing you. Like you're muffled, and then.
Is it any better?
I don't know.
Is it any better?
Yeah, that's better. But it seems like you turn away, and maybe if you turn or something, just try and keep your head forward.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do it, and we're in the process of doing it, but we're going to do it at a grassroots level. I mean, we're going to try to look for younger drivers who are up and coming, and local guys here. And of course, if any opportunity comes about to nab a big name driver, we're certainly going to be interested in it. So all you guys out in Cali, when those contracts come up in December, please know the checkbook is open.
There you go. And there is a checkbook. The checkbook's open for one guy in Pennsylvania too. I got to get back on that payroll.
Yeah, I just got back on it. It's nice. I'm not as tan as I was, but you know, it's a lot more productive this way.
You know, that question was from Richard Barnett, and actually we had a few questions come in through email about an off-road team. Because I think once you signed J.R. Mitch, people were like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" You know.
Well, I mean, certainly off-road's. It's still the biggest sector of the industry, and you know, it's not that we're ignoring it. I mean, we still sell more into that segment than we do the others. But right now, the way it's set up, our teams are set up where we have a very strong oval team with David Mayu and Pete and Chloe. You know, those two guys are super fast. I mean, I'd be confident in going to any oval race in the country, and I think we'd be favored to win. The on-road team, you know, we got Andrew, and we're getting ready to make a pretty big announcement on 2 more other drivers because we're already starting to get ready for the upcoming Worlds next year that are going to be in Florida. And, you know, we certainly, you know, want to expand in the off-road market as well. But, you know, it's like the NBA. It's not as easy as just writing a check. I mean,
Right.
if it was easy, it was just as easy as writing a check. It'd be like the old days. Everybody would be running for me. But, things change, and you just got to work within the framework. And, again, like you said, and I said, and I admit it, I was away for a while. And, some of those guys may have lost confidence or whatever, or they forgot about Trinity, or, now it's my job to make them remember. So, that's where we are.
Yeah, judging from all the emails that we got on the off-road question, there's a lot of people anxious to see Trinity back in there. So,
yeah.
Let me get to this guy. Just wrote to me an email. Just gave me his first name, Robert, in Indiana. Just wanted to say thank you, Ernie, for everything that you've done for the industry over the years. And let me see what he says here. I appreciate Jim Dieter helping me out at a lot of races. Can you touch on your relationship with Jim Dieter briefly?
Sure. I mean, I first met Jim at the U.S. Indoors in Cleveland. It was in the 80s sometime. I don't remember. I mean, we had a pretty strong team of Joel and Bob Light at that time, and a couple of other people, but Joel and Bob Light were the two big guys. And we came to Cleveland, and this guy from Chicago was running really fast. It happened to be Jim. I mean, most people don't know, but Jim is an incredible driver. On road and, off-road or dirt oval. I mean, that guy could really wheel. I mean, he's been national champion a couple of times. And he ran really good, and we made him a deal right there to run for us. And I think he finished third at that event. Joel won, Bob Light was second, and Jim was third. And Jim was running a lot higher. I mean, he had a legitimate shot to, maybe get second, or he may possibly even challenge Joel in that race. So that's where we started, and we just became really good friends. I mean, he's one of the most loyal people I've ever met, and he's one of the few people in the industry that, I trust with my kids. I mean, he's never done anything to hurt me. He never would, and he's just a class guy and one of the hardest workers I've ever met. And I mean, for my money, he's the best motor guy in the industry. I mean, we walk into a track and we'll, you can't always have the fastest stuff. Sometimes we will go there and it's not. I mean, Jim will stay up all night, all week. I mean, he won't quit until they say the race is over. And that's all you can ask for. I mean, I know he's 150% in our camp and vice versa. So, we've been friends for a long time, and I think we'll be friends forever.
Yeah, great guy. We had him on the show back in the early.
I heard that. I didn't hear that. I have to go back and look that up. And actually, Jim only answering my phone calls, and I hardly ever talk to him, so I never know.
Wow. Joe Ivo wanted to get your opinion on pan car racing. Do you think that can ever make a comeback again?
I think it's making a comeback. I mean, I think 12 scales, getting bigger and bigger, and there's some big movement in that, and touring I'm a little worried about, but yeah. I think the oval racing I think is going great. I mean, with their pan cars, and I mean, oval this year was phenomenal for us, and we really care about the racing. In fact, I'm thinking about sponsoring a big oval race this next year. In fact, I want to try to have it at one of Boylan's permanent tracks. But yeah, I want to get more in oval and anything we do. I mean, that's my first love. Out of slot cars, I mean, 12 scale on-road racing is, for me, is F1. That's where we started. I mean, that's where Joel started, and I think it's the purest form of racing.
I'm going to just rip through these real quick for you, Ernie, because I know we've been on for a while. Gene Perez.
Okay.
In South Carolina, you were just talking about oval racing and on-road. He wanted to know why Trinity was not a sponsor of the Snowbirds anymore. Now, I guess you said no questions hold bar, so there you go.
No. Well, we are a sponsor of the Snowbirds. We've been a sponsor every single year, but we weren't the major sponsor
Right, that's what I think
the
he's getting at.
last
The
year.
title sponsor, he said the title.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and that was, by choice, nothing against Mike. I mean, it was a question of budget and where we could, at the time we needed money for tooling, and it was either do that or do the sponsorship of the race. I mean, I've since asked Mike that, if A-Main for some reason doesn't want the sponsorship, that we would take it back again. But we've always supported the Snowbirds, and we continue to do so. I mean, it's my favorite race. I mean, especially if you live somewhere. I mean, it might sound silly, but, since I live in Florida now, and this is my home, the Florida races are more important to me than anything. I mean, people ask me why I sponsored the Nationals at West Palm Beach when I was in a lawsuit with Roar. And, my answer to that was it had nothing to do with the lawsuit. I mean, what it had to do with was this is my home. I mean, I wanted to support the Florida track and the Florida racers who support me, and we want to support racing. And it's the same thing with the World Championships next year. It's going to be held at Kissimmee. We're going to do everything we can to support that and try to win it. I mean, those races to me now mean more than they ever did because I live here.
Well, there we go. And Ernie's there at Snowbirds every year. So, Michael Murray in Georgia. Michael Murray in Georgia. He asks, "Will we see TRC back?" Foam tires. Whoa! What are you doing in the background? What's Nick doing? Is he playing Call of Duty in the background?
If he was, he'd be cursing.
Yeah, I know that. Hey, I was in there playing with him a couple weeks ago, him and his buddies. You're absolutely right on that.
It's funny. When they got Call of Duty, I had no idea, they get the headsets and stuff, and I was asleep. Nick pretty much stays up all night, especially during summer breaks. And Tony was coming over, I think, on a Saturday morning to pick up some papers. They were going to have coffee. He gets up early too. So the bell rang at like 6 a.m. and I'm coming out of my bedroom, and all of a sudden I open the door and I hear this screaming and yelling and cursing coming from the other side of the house. And that was the first time I realized that what Nick does on these headsets. I couldn't believe it. Uh-huh. No, that's not Nick. That's some Florida pet that is driving me crazy out here. Sounds like a duck or something, but it's not. I forgot what it is. And that's right out the bedroom. You hear it all night.
Funny stuff. TRC foam tires, yeah.
I would say, again, probably not, and for this reason, two reasons. One, foam 12 scale or foam 10 scale, and Kirby can tell you this, and Ryan, nothing's changed. It's an enormous amount of intense labor. I mean, you need the jet for it to cut the donuts out. They still glue it the same way, either by CA or with wood cement. I mean, it's enormous. It's a dirty job, especially in Florida. We would need even more vents and things that we had in New Jersey. I don't know if you remember, but we had a whole room with alarms on and vents that we couldn't get a CO unless we had this, where they just glued the rims. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, just to build that room, I believe back then, it was, with those vents, it was like $30,000 just to do that. Yeah. And then it's the rubber. I mean, the rubber changes so much. I mean, we 20 years ago, we'd buy all the rubber the same place. Now that rubber really is not competitive. Most of the good rubber is coming from Japan. And again, it's the same thing. If you're going to buy from middlemen, the prices are so much higher. The only way to do that is to go right to the maker. And to go to the maker, it's a vessel or a container. And it's not something I want to invest my money in, because the return is not as good. And if I got back into TRC, I'd have the same problem I think Jack used to have, or still has. 50% of the stuff you're cutting is going to the team to promote it. And not worth it for me anymore. There's a lot of guys making good tires, Jayco, Mogums, Marcus Movis, the BSR, tons of good tires out there.
I used to love that water jet. I used to hide behind there to kill some time a lot. Anyway.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I remember when I got the bill for that, I said to myself again, we're never going to pay for this. I'm not gonna...
That thing was pretty cool, though. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Raymond Corbin in New York asked, will we ever see Tech Talk back again?
That was the greatest I think that was the greatest bulletin board we ever had in RC. I mean, it was the brain trust of John Thorley. And the problem for Tech Talk back then, to run as good as it did, it needed, constant supervision and constant, there's just not the time to put into it anymore. And unfortunately, with some of the other boards, which I won't even go up anymore, it's become more of an attack place than any really good discussion. I mean, if people are really interested in getting their cars better or setups better, there's so many different avenues. I mean, most of these good drivers are posting their setup sheets now. It's not like it was in the old days. I mean, if you walk up to a driver, they'll tell you for the most part what they're running or try to help you. It's not like the old days. I mean, I go back to the Ratty days. I remember, this is going old school, maybe Cliff Led or Curtis Hustler, those guys will remember this, or Ralphie, I don't know how many others. But, I mean, Joel was that kid, and we were running indoors in Ratties, and the track was so small that with the spectators sat on little benches all around the track. So when the drivers would come around the track, you'd have to lift your legs, and the cars would go around it. I mean, and these guys were so good, like Lavico, Joel, Repeat Fusco, Ken Clausen. Those guys were so good they could run on a track this small. But it was like, it was cutthroat back then. I mean, Joel was, I think, 12. He was leading a race, a four-cell race. And back in those days, there were takeouts all the time. And there was a guy named Bill Giannis. He was tough as nails. I mean, and he ran Joel right off the track and cost him the national championship. And, I went into him and got into him a little bit in his face. And, he basically, I don't know if I can you curse on this podcast or not?
Hell yeah, you can.
Okay. But he said, he didn't know who I was. He says, if Joel can't take it, fuck him. And that was it. I mean, that's the way it was. I mean, I was probably pissed, but that's the race back then, drivers didn't. I can only imagine somebody going up to Ken Clausen and ask him for a setup. I mean, I don't imagine what Kent would tell. I mean, when Kent ran for me once in Reno, Nevada, there was an outdoor race, and I wanted to practice. The track was a dust bowl. But, I mean, Kent was probably right. It was probably no traction, but I still wanted to go out there. Kent just ran his car flat punch through the sweeper and broke the whole course, so he didn't have to practice anymore. I mean, that's the way it was. It's not like it is today. So, I mean, I think you could probably get information, good information to probably any team. My advice to people that want to do better, come to a big race. Even if you don't race, come to Aurora Nationals and look around, look in the pits, ask some of the top drivers, how do you do this, how do you do that? When I raced flat cars, I started out as a kid, I raced the Pokes Hobbies, like I said, and then I went into Brooklyn to a place called Buzzarama. I raced there every day. And we were running cars back then like Cucarachas or Vipers or, ready to run cars. And then one day, I saw a magazine. It was a newspaper called Scale Auto Racing News, and I opened this newspaper up, and it was like cars like I had never seen. It was Tony and Bob Emmett and John Sucris and Mike Stubbe, all these big time slot car drivers with cars that I never seen before. And there was a big race out in Nutley, New Jersey. Man, I had a car back then. We took a bus to go out there. And I had my slot car box, and I was going to race. And when I got there and looked at the track and looked how fast these guys were, I didn't even race. I didn't enter, but I walked around and looked and saw what I could find out, and that's how I got better. And that's the best advice I could give anybody. You know, if you want to be the best, look at guys who are the best. You know, look at Mayu in oval. Look at, Cavallari in off-road. Look at these guys, Andrew Knapp or Kevin Hebert or Josh Cyril. Look at these guys in on-road. I mean, you'll get more out of that trip, one trip, than you probably get, trying to race 6 months in your own club. Remember, the only way to go faster is to lose and run against somebody who's better.
There we go. That's good advice.
Yeah, I mean,
Though that wouldn't work for me, though. But anyway.
Not for you.
No.
It would work for you. It probably wouldn't work for Kirby.
No, that's true. Yeah, let's beat up on Kirby. And he still has not texted me back to tell me what base he's on. So we can assume he's still trying to swing.
I mean, in a way, I'm glad Kirby's not there, because half of this podcast would have been dedicated to how good of an oval racer he was. I mean, I had to listen to it all night. Almost be as bad as if the Fabulous One was here.
Oh, yeah.
Barry, what's up, Barry?
Barry, we know he's listening. He's a fan of the show.
Yeah.
Real quick, let's see here. Philip in Ohio. That's all he gave me. Now, he wants to thank you for all the great products over the years. And what is your favorite product that you came out with? Favorite car kit, it says. Battery. Listen to that in the background.
I know, man. You try sleeping down here.
We're going to have to... Yeah, your favorite project. Yeah, which one came out?
I would say probably there's two of them. I mean, the first one would have to be the Monster stock, horsepower stock motor. I mean, that was the first motor that we actually put in the box. It was the first huge seller. And, it was the whole Monster horsepower thing. And, it kind of propelled us. And then the second one, which is a long story, was the Evolution 10. And that was held at the Ranch Pit Shop, which was, not only mine, but I think everybody's all-time favorite RC track in California. It was owned by John Thorpe, and then Gil and Janet Losi took it over, and it was the mecca of RC. I mean, if you went to an on-road race, I mean, that was it. I mean, I had goosebumps when I walked into that place. And we'd come out, I mean, obviously it was Associated's home track, and Joel at that time was running an Associated car, and we had been working on the Evolution 10 on the side. Nobody knew about it. Dieter had designed the whole thing from the scratch up, and it was, we'd run out, Joel would run out a practice run. Somebody would grab the car, we'd run back to the pits and cover it with a towel, but nobody still got it, what it was. And Joel went out for the first round of qualifying, I think DQ'd by, a good margin. And, somebody announced that it was an Associated car, and John Thorley was running the race at that track, and then he basically knew what was going on. He said, no, that's the new Trinity Evolution 10. And, for us, it was just a great way. I mean, we got a lot of hoopla. We wouldn't let anybody look at the car. It was toweled the whole way through. Nobody got a picture of it, even after the winning. And it was our first, big, on-road car. So those two projects, because, I know how hard Tony and, we worked on the motor, and I know how hard Jim and Joel and I think even Junior helped us on the car side of it. So those two would be my two favorites. And Joel went on to the World Championship. I mean, that was, and Tyree finished second. So it was a great weekend for us.
I just got a couple more here for you, and I'll let you go, Ernie. I know you're.
Yeah, no problem.
Time up. We got from the Netherlands. We got an email, and I don't know how to pronounce these names at all, but to me it looks like Dan Schuring from the Netherlands. And he just simply states, are you looking for a promotional driver in the Netherlands / Holland? Friendly regards, Dan. I think he's applying for the team here, so he wants to know if you'll sign him up.
Well, you can always contact me on Facebook on private message and send me a resume, and we'll certainly take a look at it. I can tell you overseas for us now, we're looking for agents in different countries. So if we had an agent in the Netherlands, which I don't think we do at the moment, that would be a key thing. But certainly send the resume in and I'll get back to you. I mean, I answer everything on that. I mean, most people will tell you I'm pretty addicted to Facebook and email, so you'll get an answer.
Cool. There you go. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but there you go, Dan. Actually, I have a question here it's actually a Twitter question. Here we go. And this guy goes by the Twitter handle JR Mitch.
JR Mitch, that name sounds familiar. Is he verified?
No, let's see. No, it's not verified, so we can't confirm this. Yeah, I want to get verified, by the way. Are you verified yet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Real quick question for Ernie. What's your favorite part about being involved in the hobby industry? From JR Mitch.
Is that from JR?
That's from JR Mitch. What's your favorite part about being in the hobby industry?
I mean, I think it probably goes back from, the day one in my mom's apartment in Brooklyn. I mean, from that day, I just never thought about building something to make a profit on it, although I think probably everybody thinks the only reason why I do it is for the money. It's not. I mean, I do things now for the competitive, nature. Yeah, I love doing that. I mean, the certified line of products that we're making now, the certified stators and the certified rotors, I do those myself. And, people say, well, why don't you hire people to do it? Because sometimes I'm in there on a Saturday or Sunday doing that, but that's when I have time to go through the stuff. And people will say, well, why don't you hire some other people to do that? I want to do it. I mean, for me, I get a great deal of satisfaction going to a race like at West Palm, at Tim Potter's track, at the Nationals, with Dieter there, who knows, a million times more than I do. But to give Dieter a stator that I picked out myself and a rotor, and he puts it together and tunes it, and Matt goes out and wins the national championship, I get a lot of satisfaction out of that because I was a part of it and not just writing a check. So I guess that still drives me. I mean, it's always driven me to try to be the best I could be. And, always try to beat the best. I mean, it goes back to that Ratty story, with Associated. I mean, how you beat a team this big. I mean, they were a great company. They're still a great company. I mean, but, yeah, that was fun. For me, when I was doing it, we went to a race and we ran against Associated. When I walked in there, I wanted to beat one person, Reedy. And Reedy wanted to beat one person, me. I mean, we hated each other in those 8 minutes, but when they were all said and done, we were good friends. I mean, there was a respect there that, never ended. And, I know a lot of people think Mike and I didn't like each other. I mean, deep down, I don't think that was ever the case. I just think we were true competitors and we wanted to rip each other's throat out. But when it was all said and done, we just accepted it. I mean, Mike beat me plenty of times. And, we had our share of wins, but it was fun.
Yeah, it made it fun. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, you had the love and passion for the sport and for the hobby. So, I mean, hey, little do you know that when I started at Trinity, you could have said to me, hey, I'm going to pay you in a bag of peanuts. I would have worked there anyway.
I think we offered that, and you turned it down.
No. Oh, man. Actually, I did get paid in peanuts. Hi-yo. That's, I could, a lot of these questions I'm scrolling through right now about Roar and stuff. We already touched on all that. Here's one from, real quick, don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm going to say it's Roger Kellum from Colorado. He asked, would you ever plan on opening up your own racetrack?
I mean, that's always been a dream. I mean, I wanted to open up a place like the ranch. I mean, when Losi took that over from John Thorpe, they ran a distributorship out of a small back room, and they were incredibly successful. I mean, they took a niche market that basically wasn't being catered to. I mean, Junior and those guys would go out and race, and Pops and Rossetti and all those guys with Jack Johnson, they'd go out and race on the weekends, and people would be calling Monday morning to find what kind of setups they were running, what's good, what's bad, and then RPS was just shipping it right there. And then you had the track. It was phenomenal. I mean, I'd love to do that, but the problem becomes, you reach a time in your life where, it's just difficult when you've got a lot of responsibilities. When I was, young and had absolutely nothing to lose, it was much easier to do business. I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but I don't know if you know the story about the Sanyo 1700 SCEs when that first came out. Did I ever tell you about that? We were buying batteries from Sanyo, and we got a tip that this new battery was going to come out. And I knew it was going to be a game changer. And at that time, we were buying from Sanyo. And the problem I had was I wanted an exclusive on the cell. And Sanyo came back to me and said, well, you can't have an exclusive because your credit limit isn't high enough to take the first loss. And, again, being young and having no responsibilities and being a gambler or a maverick, I mortgaged my house and put my house up so I could get the whole first run. I mean, today I couldn't do that because, I got 3 kids that count on me and I got a lot of other responsibilities. So a track, to build a track and location and with the quality of race arena like Losi had, for me to do at this point in my life, I don't think I have enough time to do that. I mean, running a track the way the Losi's did, and I think they ran the best race facility ever. It's a 20, 18-hour work week. It's work day, 2 shifts. I mean, they got a whole family in there. And I think, when I went out, I mean, I forgot what year it was, when I bought half of Losi and I moved out there, I mean, they were done with the track. I mean, they wanted to sell the track because, I mean, it's just too much of a headache. I mean, you're always there. So, I mean, it'd be great to have, and I hope somebody, else could do something like that. But, for me, that was the greatest, racetrack ever. Mm-hmm. But it's not in the cards for me today.
Well, you could hire me and Kirby to come down there and run that for you. Anyway.
I could, but you and Kirby wanted to work like 5 hours a day and 4-day week. That would get too much done.
Oh, man.
Especially Kirby.
No doubt. And he still has not texted me back, by the way.
I know what he's going to tell you. He was busy. The girl probably stood him off. He probably didn't go on there today,
Hey, this is from David Grady in Florida. He just says, thank you very much for all you've done for the industry over the years, and can you please hit the Imperial March song? Wow, dude. How do you think Trinity got the Evil Empire tag?
I mean, if I had to pick out one person, I think it's probably Gene. I mean, Gene, I think disliked me, passionately, and I think anything that went wrong, it was somehow my fault. And some of it was for sure, but yeah, that's probably where it came. I mean, it was a good rivalry associated in Trinity. I mean, it just was. I didn't mind it. I mean, early on, God.
Good, I'll put it in the background while you talk.
Nobody will be able to hear me.
Oh, they can hear you.
Seriously?
Yep.
I can't even hear myself. No, I say early on, you know, so many people believe most of the stories, and if it really gets you, you know, like you'd be hated. I mean, you'd sponsor a race and introduce you, and people would boo, you know. But
Yeah.
as I got older, you know, I just realized a lot of it was respect. I mean, you know, and I don't think anybody really, you know, had any harm to it. I mean, it was just a good rivalry between us and Associates. I mean, I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's all good fun.
When I came into the industry, I had a different perspective, and my perspective was to you know, to succeed. And, you know, if you were in my way, I was going to run over you. And it wasn't I didn't like you. It was just you were in my way. And, you know, some people don't like that type of attitude, especially when you're in a hobby-type environment, which some people consider a hobby. I consider it a business from day one. And I honestly liked everyone in the industry. I mean, I had nothing bad to say about those people. I mean, I loved Reedy. You know, I respected Gene. I had a good relationship with Roger. I loved Cliff Les. I mean, you know, it was an end to a means, you know. And, you know, I'd do it all over again. And, you know, I think I did it right. Oh, shit.
When you walk around the house, I just picture that playing, too. Even around the house, like going to Nick's room. Nick, clean your room. And in the background, that's playing.
Actually, Little Jules carries a recording around it and runs in front of me with it playing. And when he's at school, I take the recorder and wrap it around Max's neck, and Max just walks around and drags it around the house.
Oh.
I would bring Max on now, but he's already sleeping. You know, scene's over. He ate dinner, cleaned himself, and then ignored everybody and went to sleep.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah, we have a lot of fun with it on the show, and we appreciate you going with it too. So. Hey,
it was great. Loved it.
Yeah. That, you know, hey, and I gotta thank you for blow some smoke up your ass here. But you know, I thank you for getting me in the industry. Trinity was my first job in the industry, and boy, when I got the job there, and I was so excited. I left my home in Pennsylvania and went to Jersey, not knowing anybody but Kirby Hand.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and so it was something I always wanted to do, though. And actually, it's a funny story. I had it in my yearbook, and it was supposed to go in my yearbook, but they never printed any of my goals, actually.
Really?
But one of them was I wanted to work at Trinity.
Cool.
That was one of my goals from high school, and you can ask my girlfriend to this day. That's what I kept saying back in high school. I'm going to go work in the industry, and I appreciate giving me the opportunity because I made a lot of great friends. Now, you know, to this day, I still have them all just because I was working at Trinity. So
hey, cool, man. That. Thanks for all your hard work, too. And it's great to see the show being so successful, even though, you know, Kirby has nothing to do with it, obviously.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I am rooting for the Niners this year.
You are rooting for the Niners this year?
I am. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but I can no longer be a Jet fan as long as Sanchez is still in New York. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It doesn't shock me. You jump around team to team.
Well, yeah.
You know.
I mean, it's just easy bandwagon.
Yeah. But, yeah. Hey, so yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you letting me get my foot in the door.
Cool.
Made a lot of good friends.
Yeah, I mean, there are good guys in this industry. And we had a lot of great friends in New Jersey that worked for us. I mean, it's just great.
Rich Hawks, still in Jersey. Talk to him from time to time. Good guy.
Yeah, good guy.
But yeah, so that was cool. And we were talking about it pre-show, me and Kirby, earlier in the first half of the show. We were young, so I don't know if we gave you 100% at Trinity because we were young, no responsibilities or anything. I think if you were to hire me now, I'd be a different person. But, I was a pain in your ass back then because I was just a young brat. So
no, man. Honestly, I don't remember that at all. I think you guys did good. I mean, I had no problems with you at all. Kirby, maybe. I do. I always have to try to look for Kirby. I'd always go to Ryan and say, "Where the hell is your brother?" And he'd say he's probably off somewhere. And I'd always say, "Man, I wish he could be like the good hand." No, Kirby was cool. It was fun. I mean, if somebody said to me right now, you can go back and do that again with that same group, I'd do it in a second. Because it was fun. I mean, I lived to do that. It was just so much fun. It was a new challenge.
Yeah, I know Kirby and I missed it a lot. Like, as far as interacting with everybody and just hanging out, like I said, again, we didn't give you probably 100% because we were like, we couldn't wait to get back to the apartment and just hang out, go to the mall and stuff like that. And Trinity was a place where we had to go like 8 hours out of the day.
I hear you.
But yeah, it was good times though. Thanks again. So we appreciate you being on the show. Finally, we got, I could be here all night, but we'll have you on the show again. And it's not going to be another year down the road. So
cool. Hey, can I say one thing before we leave?
Sure.
Dwight, please stay. Please. You've screwed Orlando. This franchise is screwed up. And now I would really appreciate it for our close friendship if you would screw LA up. So please stay there. No other city should have to put up with your nonsense. You are a cancer, and I hope you never win a championship. If I ever had to root against you or LeBron, I think I would root for LeBron. And I hate him.
Wow. I'm trying to get rid of him, Ernie. Come on now.
I hear you, man. The sad thing, the whole thing, I mean, I feel bad in a way for the Lakers because, I mean, the legacy they have all the great big men. And for this guy to even consider leaving is an embarrassment to him and the Lakers. I mean, you got to be kidding. That's a storybook ending there. All you got to do is play. I know he doesn't want to share the spotlight with Kobe, but Christ, I'd like to play with the first best or second best player in the NBA. I mean, I tell you one more time. I know you guys want to go, but I mean, I remember Dwight. This was when he was, he was already saying he was leaving, and it was a shambles in the locker room, and I forgot who they were playing. But, we were getting blown out, and Dwight comes back to the bench, and, I'm right there so I could hear this shit. Stan was the coach, and Dwight is, like, bitching and moaning to everybody that they got to get the ball into him. And it was like, a 12-year-old at the playground. And I remember Stan, who didn't take any shit from anybody, said, Dwight, how are we going to throw the ball into you with 4 or 5 minutes left to go? They're going to foul you and you're going to miss both free throws.
It's so true.
And it was true. They did a foul and he missed both free throws, or they'd throw it in and he couldn't catch the ball. He'd keep the ball low and they'd steal the ball from him in 2 seconds. He had the worst hands. I mean, it's amazing. You got Patrick Ewing helping him, Hall of Famer, and he couldn't do anything with him. Unreal. I don't know.
Let him go. Let him go to Houston. So.
I hear you guys bringing Bynum back, though. Did you hear Bynum said he would not try out for any team? His agent said he will not work out for any team.
Wow. All right, listen to that. Here comes Ernie's helicopter coming to get him. Hear that?
I hear it. Wait a minute. It's Kirby.
Oh, Kirby's back from his date.
Alone.
All right, Ernie.
All right. Take care, man. Thanks for everybody listening. Thanks for your questions, man. Good racing. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks.